Victims of crime often turn to support groups. They also have access to funds. But Ontario is about to change the rules on how much victims get depending on the crime. As Shirley Engel reports, critics aren't buying it.
Ideally, I would have been able to retire.
Doug Macklem's life was turned upside down by romantic fraud.
Where you see yourself being happy and such with the person you felt you trusted, and then that whole reality explodes.
A woman bilked him for $850,000, money his parents left him to cope with his cerebral palsy. Though Doug got victim support during the court process, he struggled to find help beyond that.
I've adapted myself to whatever the system had available, which isn't, quite frankly, for fraud victims, isn't much.
Global News has learned in Ontario, victims like Doug were going to be considered worth half as much in funding dollars as victims of violent crime. Just before leaders hit the hustings, emails show the province's Justice Ministry quietly informed victims groups of a new funding formula. Offences such as abduction, homicide, robbery and sexual assault would be weighted higher than so-called non-violent crimes. Break and enter, motor vehicle accidents such as drunk driving, and fraud.
The people that need the most help will probably get the less funding. It's just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Victims advocates say the type of crime doesn't determine the level of need.
Especially for break and enters, if there's children, they can be fearful to go home, to go to sleep. So families might need resources for quite a while to help children cope.
A spokesman for the provincial Liberal government told Global News it's trying to better match supply with demand, and there would be no reduction in overall funding for victims. With an election campaign currently underway, all plans have been put on hold. This criminology expert says no other province in Canada does this. It would make it harder for support services to sustain funding.
You don't know how many of the victims that get a lot of points and so would bring in more money you're going to get this year as opposed to next year.
Doug Macklem hopes his situation proves it's a bad idea.
It makes the victim of nonviolent crime feel like they're a second-class citizen.
And he's still got a long road to emotional recovery. Shirley Engel, Global News, Ottawa.